Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Strategy Talks and Mechanics Guide series. Now, this episode was one that was actually voted on by you guys. I did a little mini bracket of a bunch of video ideas that I had. Now, I'm going to make a lot of those videos. I want to make every single one of those videos that I proposed to you guys in those brackets, and a few more that I forgot to put in the brackets. I have a lot of ideas. Let's just put it that way. But, this one was the one that won the bracket, so I figured it should be the one that I should prioritize and make first, and that is the concept of power pairs, and that is just the whole idea of what any combos of two Pokemon that synergize really well together for a really strong duo that can produce a lot of strength just on their own. You can just make them, have them be there, and then the rest of the team just kind of level them or whatever you want to do. You can set anything. And the core of those two Pokemon is really powerful and probably the core of a lot of your teams. Now, before I really get into it, I want to discuss a general concept for some of the more interesting skills and like how this dives. And I want to start by talking about Mimikyu. Now, Mimikyu is very interesting because it's got Berry Burst, which, as you know, is a really complicated... It's a weird skill. It collects a bunch of its own berries while also then collecting other Pokemon on the team's berries. And this applies to Mimikyu, and to a lesser extent with Braviary, but Mimikyu has better synergy with certain Pokemon than other ones. Now, it's kind of in this weird spot. It's like a pseudo-generalist, but it also does extra good at its specific island, but not as good as Favored Berry Specialists, unless you have a lot of Favored Berry Specialists. So it's just like in this weird middle ground area where it's like a pseudo-generalist, pseudo-berry specialist. Like, it tries towing the line of what its role really is. But it's a pretty good Pokemon. And something that I want to bring attention to, it actually, you'd think it synergizes best with just whatever has Favored Berry. But that's not necessarily always the case, because in this case, if you go to Old Gold Power Plant, where it works out best, Mimikyu has really good synergy with Steelix, comparative to Raichu, because Raichu has a weaker base strength berry. And Berry Burst produces a flat number of berries, so it matters more what the type of the berry is than it does type of the berry in terms of its base strength, comparative to the berries, whether or not it's favored. So Steelix having the second strongest berry type in the game, and Raichu having the second weakest berry type in the game, means that Mimikyu actually does a lot better alongside Steelix at Old Gold Power Plant than Raichu does. And I think that the Mimikyu Steelix combo is particularly notable because let's say if I generated a 3 Steelix team here, gave them all Berry Finding S. In fact, I should have done this before duplicating it because that makes things a little bit easier. And let's say I made this Mimikyu, a Mimikyu that's actually worth investing. Like, it's got Help Speed M and Skill Trigger M. And I maxed out its main skill. You can see that with just one Steelix on the team, it does a little bit more than the Steelix. But as you get more in there, it actually significantly outperforms the Steelix with Berry Finding S. But the Mimikyu would be doing worse alongside Raichu's, even if Raichu's are a stronger option. So I think Mimikyu Steelix is a particularly notable power pair that doesn't necessarily go out and hunt a good Steelix if you have a good Mimikyu. It might be a nice little addition, but Raichu is probably going to do you well enough if you have it. But I think it's notable that Mimikyu might be on your radar if you have a Steelix, vice versa. It's just an interesting thing to note. And there is, to a lesser extent, if I take a look at the different berry types in the game. Braviary has this going on for it to a little bit of a lesser extent because Flying Berry is the weakest type in the game. But Water Berry isn't quite nearly as strong as Steel Berry, but it is stronger. And Fairy Berry is also pretty weak. So Braviary's got notably more synergy with Feraligatr than it does with other Braviary or Dodrio or Clefable. So just another extra thing going for Feraligatr, but it's not as significant of a difference as like the Steelix Raichu difference with Mimikyu. Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was early game. Early game, what sort of power pairs are there? Now, the way I wanted to make these next comparisons was if you're looking to push strength, so maybe willing to run a good camp ticket, early game, what options are there? And I was like going to compare two favored berry specialists. Now, for the sake of these comparisons, I dropped my map bonus. I have no event bonus, and I dropped my map bonus down to 0%. So all these can be multiplied up by area bonus, but for every single one of these comparisons, they're going to be equivalent in having 0% area bonus. Now, the comparison is having favored berry on favored berry specialist, a decent one I picked for Alligator. How does that compare to these particular power pairs? And then I picked for a meal if it's an ingredient specialist combo, level 50, because I find that if you're really working on a meal, you can get to level 50 pretty easily. I remember early game, I got some meals to level 50 rather easily, so that's just kind of why I picked that. And then using a Wigglytuff for healer, because we're looking at the early game potential. And one combo that I noticed, and has a lot of players, if you look at the comparison of just two for alligators, 522,000 strength. If I was to swap in, say, this first power pair that I want to talk about, now granted, they're not 100% reliable, so maybe stockpile a little bit tomatoes, but 579,000 strength. And that is Victory Bell with Blastoise. Even if you're not reliably making Dream Eater Butter Curry, which is the meal that you're targeting for strong weeks, even if you're not reliably making it and you're every once in a while making a backup meal like Simple Chowder, the strength is still coming out stronger, even without Favored Berry, than having two Favored Berry Finding S berry specialists. Which is why I think it's of particular note that if you just want to go on easy mode and not think about meals, not think about the mono ingredient meta, not think about swapping, it's notable that an early game player might just look for an ABX Victory Bell and an ABX Blastoise, and then with decent sub skills, granted this might be a little bit difficult to find, especially targeting a specific ingredient list, but given that you don't care about what the C ingredient is for this purpose, it's reasonable that you might be a bit more picky and look for specifically ingredient finding M and help speed M on them. And you can get a significant amount of cocoa more than what you need, a significant amount more potatoes, and a decent amount of milk and tomatoes to pretty reliably make at least 2 meals a day of that Dream Eater Butter Curry, which is one of the strongest meals. It's top 4. It's top 4 strongest meals, and theoretically, late game, you can make this meal without a good camp ticket even. So, it's something interesting of note, and one of the power pairs that I want to bring attention to, because it is stronger than two favored berry finding S berry specialists. Now, notably, you can also do this with Mr. Mime, but it's a bit more unreliable, because Mr. Mime isn't as good at finding ingredients, so a bit more unreliable than the Victory Bell, and you can do it, but you can do that about the same time. Except for Mr. Mime doesn't spawn at green grass, so it might be more difficult to catch, because it's only at Siam Beach early game. So, it's just a side grade option that has the same exact synergy, but is a little bit worse, but still comes out to the same strength because of how ingredients and meals work in this game. Now, that's the only combo that I could really find for early game. Now I wanted to talk about the late game. And for this comparison, now this is a ridiculous comparison. Nobody has 4 berry finding S berry for alligators that they're running alongside a decent healer. But this is the comparison I decided to make. And this is honestly the duo that inspired this entire video. Is what I like to nickname Crespion. Now, I'm particularly attached to this combo because I've actually got this combo going for me on my main account. Now, don't go hunting Cresselia if you don't have one. This is only for the people who caught good Cresselias. I think you should have particular interest in Espeon, because Espeon synergizes amazingly with Cresselia. It is one of the strongest generalists in the game, and it also helps with Cresselia's type bonus. So there is something to consider there, and if we compare a good healer, not Cresselia, because Cresselia is a mediocre healer. If we compare the good healer alongside 4 berry finding S berry specialists, late game, we're looking at 2 million Snorlax strength throughout the course of the week. Again, that's with no area bonus. If we throw that same team together, 2 million Snorlax strength. Now, it's technically a little bit weaker than the other team that we saw for overall strength, but at the same time, this doesn't care about Favored Berry. This happens anywhere, and in fact, if we were to add Psychic Favored Berry to this, it takes them even further. This is a combo that having the Espeon, if you're using Cresselia as your main healer because you caught a really good one during the event, having a good Espeon alongside of it is like just having a Favored Berry specialist everywhere. Because it boosts Cresselia's main skill, and it also applies really good generalist strength, and that about equals what another Berry Finding S Berry specialist can output. So, and you could have better Espeon than this, you could have a better Feraligatr than this, but it's definitely something that you should look into if you are using Cresselia. I think this is one of the strongest duos in the game, and unfortunately, Cresselia is a legendary though, and I would never advise to hunt a legendary outside of its legendary event, just because it is so... You'll drive yourself mad if you're doing it. So only note this if you have a good Cresselia already. But it's something I wanted to mention because it inspired the video. Now, this is a bit of another side thing. Mr. Mime also has really good synergy with Cresselia. And it also has really good synergy with Espeon as well, because they have... Mr. Mime, it's not a skill specialist, but it has a really interesting main skill in skill copy. So it can copy Lunar Blessing, which is one of the most powerful skills in the game. It can copy Charge Strength M, which is also a really powerful main skill. So these three can actually kind of make a trio, which kind of goes outside the bounds of this video. Now, that's a pretty expensive trio because you're investing a lot of main skill seeds across this one, because this is a skill-focused Mr. Mime, which is more viable than it used to be. But it's just... It's another option. And as you can see, it actually performs, in this generalist comparison, it's actually performing better than having 4 Berry Finding S Berry Specialists. So it's certainly another consideration and something else that you could make note of. And Mr. Mime can theoretically be even better than this. He theoretically can be worse than this. Because if you have, say, Raichu's here instead, it has a weaker main skill than what Feraligatr has, because this is Charge Strength S variable, whereas Fixed is weaker. This could be self-recharge Pokemon. If that's the case, then Mr. Mime's going to be weaker. But once again, the strength of the berry can throw things off. So there's a lot of variables to consider with Mr. Mime. But even with these two having some of the weaker skills in the game, the skill copy is still making it pretty good at what it's doing. And it's kind of filling in the gaps for Cresselia's weaker healing, because it's providing an additional 12 energy a day through its own healing. On average, according to this comparison. So, it's just very interesting. Interesting trio. I wouldn't recommend this, though, just because 3 slots on the team is a lot to give up consistently, and it might make your teams look a little bit boring if you always have the same 3 Pokemon. But if you can make good use out of those tomatoes, it still is an ingredient specialist. So, I couldn't not mention it in this portion when talking about Crespeon. Anyway, the next thing I wanted to go into was power duos that match 2 Feraligatrs, per se. I couldn't really make this comparison with Crespeon because part of Cresselia's strength is gaining berries from every other Pokemon on the team, and part of its weakness is that it's not healing the other Pokemon on the team as well as if you were to use, say, Gardevoir. So, this comparisons are if you just run Gardevoir and then run 2 Favored Berry Specialists versus another duo. It's generally about 1.1 million strength on average, is what I found it to be. Now, the first one I wanted to talk about is... Actually, there's 2 potential paths here. Dragonite Charizard. This is, I think, is a very powerful combo, because it makes... If we go back to the curries, Inferno Corn Keema Curry is the 2nd strongest meal in the game, and you can reliably make it with 2 Pokemon. Dragonite and Charizard. And you also can do it with Dragonite and Tyranitar, which we'll get around to more. Now, a big counter-argument to this is the mono-ingredient meta. If you're following the mono-ingredient meta to a T, you want your Dragonite to be AAA, you want your Charizard to be AAA, because it's hands down the best herb specialist and and one of the best sausage specialists in the game. Now, there's more leniency with Charizard now, with Aggron being a thing, but Aggron's very late game. and kind of difficult to hunt, so since it only exists at one island. But there are other options for sausage, but there aren't any other options for herbs. But my counterpoint to this is, even if we remove the good camp ticket from the situation, and we look at Dragonite's raw output, 82 herbs per day is what this semi-decent Dragonite is producing. Just help speed M, ingredient finding M. If we look across all meals in the game, the one that takes the most amount of herbs is the corn keema curry. And it takes 27 per meal. That comes to 81 per day. Now, granted, these are averages. RNG could screw you and decide to pick corn all day long. So there are downsides to that. But if you are smart with your ingredient bag, then RNG shouldn't necessarily be as big of a problem, as long as you keep a decent stockpile of each ingredient that you're trying to use. So even with having corn as the B ingredient, it's still meeting the meta call, even without a good camp ticket. As long as you have a decent enough healer and you have a decent enough Dragonite. So what's the downside to running the corn is that you're not going to necessarily be swapping as much, and you'll get a lot of corn, which you'll likely have to use as filler if you're not trying to make this meal. But it has the added benefit that you're able to still make this meal with only one Pokemon as making the corn and the herbs at the same time. It's a unique property that ABA Dragonite can do if you're running that good camp ticket. And the same thing is somewhat true for Charizard. Now, Charizard's a little bit weaker in terms of the sausage. It's not quite making the meta call of Defiant Coffee Dressed Salad unless you're running that good camp ticket with 91. Even then, it's not enough. Or wait, that is enough to meet the meta call, I think. 28 times 3. I'm not the best with mental math. Let's see. 28 times 3. 84. Okay, so with good camp ticket, it does meet the meta call for sausage still, while also producing ginger on the side. Without the good camp ticket, it's only 75. Now, the biggest thing against this is that you need level 60 for these to be good. And that is a long-term invest, but I think for a power pair like this, something that on a curry week, you can just throw them on the team and have these two slots be completely flexible for whatever you want. That's powerful. And that's a power that the mono ingredient meta isn't necessarily able to do unless you're consistently rotating these two slots between your ingredient specialists. And I think that there's a lot of power in this. Now, you can also do this with Tyranitar. Now, this has got bigger opportunity cost because, once again, Tyranitar is the best ginger specialist in the game. The nice thing about this one is this Tyranitar doesn't need level 60 to be viable. It'll be good before that point because it'll be a good ginger specialist. And then you'll just change its role. But 74 ginger a day is still meeting the meta call of 60 ginger for the current top meals. Things could change. They could add more ginger meals. And you're also meeting the meta call for sausage with 84 when you're running a good camp ticket. So, really powerful potential of maybe this Tyranitar pulling in both your ginger and your sausage, depending on how much you want to rotate. Mono is still going to produce more of each one, but these Pokemon have the unique ability to make this meal without any assistance, without any rotation, without any assistance, without having to manage it as much. It allows you to just go on easy mode and just use the last two slots for literally whatever, because healer is also kind of fixed. So I think those are the most powerful. That's like one of the most powerful combos for curries. I also want to talk about desserts, and this one I think wasn't really made aware of this until I really got into it. But AAB Blastoise is interesting because it can basically meet the meta call for milk. Of 26 milk. You can see that it's producing 25 more, while already making Clodsire Eclairs twice. So it takes 26. It's almost there for Clodsire Eclairs 3 times a day for the milk requirement portion of it, while also producing the cacao. Well, that allows it to make Clodsire Eclairs basically 2 times a day without having to worry about while still being able to make, you can run Vikavolt alongside it, AAC Vikavolt. I'm getting tossing in my words right now. But AAC Vikavolt as well, with decent sub skills alongside that healer. They can make Clodsire Eclairs, which is currently literally the most powerful meal in the game. Nothing is quite there. And because of that, it's able to output a lot of strength, even if making a garbage meal as the last meal with the craft soda pop. So, and with that, if we compare all of these combos to our team of having two other favorite berry Pokemon, 1.4 million versus 1.0 million, 1.1 million versus for the Curries, we're looking at 1.4 million almost, and 1.4 million for the desserts as well, even though you're not always making the meal. So there's a lot of strength in these specific power combos, and you can even enhance this one further if you have something that produces more cacao or coffee in one of these two slots, just as a side product supplementing, or if you backstock some ingredients as well. Now, there isn't as good of a combo for salads. I tried doing something for salads as well. You can kind of get it with Blissey Toxicroak, making one of the new meals. What's it called? The Petal Blizzard Salad. But without supplementation, you're not really able to reliably do it with what I consider to be reasonable Pokemon that you're looking for. I even pushed it a little bit with this Toxicroak, giving it an additional Help Speed S, which I actually didn't need. I don't know why I did that. I think I was testing things out. Let's get rid of that, because Toxicroak's making sausage and oil. Again, you can actually justify doing this now that there are other options for oil with Luxray, with Cramorant. You can catch something else for oil, so using a Toxicroak for this purpose is a bit more justifiable. Blissey's a bit more harder to defend because Delibird exists, but it's decent for eggs, pretty good for eggs, but it's going to be difficult to catch and hunt, so dedicating a Blissey to this might be a bit less justifiable. You can only make it twice per day, and it's not as strong of a meal as what the other options have in the Corn Keema Curry and the Clodsire Eclairs. And the strength only comes out to 876,000. So it's not nearly as strong, but it's something with consideration, maybe. Hopefully we get something better for salads. Because the idea that I was trying to go for was making it so that you could have a duo for all three meal types. There's just nothing good for salads. Salads are still the worst type in the game, or worst meal type in the game. To this day, there's nothing great for salads, really. And there's no great two Pokemon combo for salads that I can easily point you to with the current salads that exist. So, yeah, that's about all I have to say about the concept of power pairs. This was kind of a difficult one to go through, but if you have enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Down in the description, I'll have a link to join the Discord. You can come join us, hang out with a cool community of people that'll talk about Pokemon Sleep and all things and the like. I've got the join button. You feel free to click that if you want to support the channel in that way and are financially capable of doing so. I don't really have any rewards for paid members, but the option's there if you want to show your support like that. And as always, I thank you all for watching and hope that you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.